my brother, that you do unto me. And I was kind of startled by those beautiful words, because as a child I used to think about those words, and I used to think that they were just, they just pertained to Jesus. You know, that Jesus was the guy who said those words because he could actually, you know, follow through on it. That whatever you did to the least of us, he would say, that was mine. And today I realize that that's not true anymore. That those words are pertinent to all of us. And I think that that's why there's a subtle agitation in the air, because we're finally waking up to the fact that whatever you do to the least of our brothers affects everyone. It affects all of us. And so even if you're the guy carrying the tiki torch, or even if you're one of those amazing women or men who are standing in love, it affects us. Good or bad, it affects us. So there's something holy about recognizing that unifying experience of sitting around, again, sitting around a table and making space for everyone. At our, when I was a kid at our table, we had 8 kids in our family. And my mom loved to debate, you know, but at our table, all of the kids agreed with my mom, so she had no one to debate with, right? So she literally had to bring people, drag people in. Most times it was my dad's friends that she would get to debate with, you know? And it was always in good, you know, they always left as friends, but there was a debate going on at my table if my mom had anything to do with it. And so our table was pretty crowded, and it wasn't because of her good cooking, because she was notoriously a horrible, horrible. I'm surprised I lived past that. I mean, I'm a loud eater now. Like, I make noises. I'm like, My sister said, you didn't do that as a kid. I said, because I had no reason to. Finally realized what good food tastes like. Anyhow, but my mom was a great debater. And so we had different people at our table. We had a space for anyone and everyone. There was no stranger at our table, and so we had very interesting conversations. And so I was raised in this family of inclusivity, recognizing that inclusivity made us better. And, you know, my dad, you know, it was still during, you know, my dad, I could think of him as Archie Bunker. There were still, you know, ragged places among us. We still lived in a blue-collar neighborhood. But my father would prefer that we brought home, you know, Irish Catholic sons-in-laws and daughter-in-laws. And that's what he would prefer, but we gave no mind to what my father would prefer. And my sisters and brothers and I married Jewish men and Muslims and Kurdish men and German Episcopalians like Will. And my brothers, they married a feisty Italian, or my dad would say Italian women. And my other brother married a fierce and beautiful half black, half Guineas lady. So what my father got at our dining room table was actually the UN. And I had a feeling that my father, you know, actually was happy that he didn't get what he preferred, because God delivered to him something better. And that's what's going on here as well. Like, we want to naturally go towards those things that we know, but really when we push ourselves into the great unknown, we experience a beautiful tapestry beyond what we could even know to ask for. Together, we're just so much more beautiful. And yeah, there's rough spots and rough edges to sort of navigate, but still, when we get past them, we actually enhance each other, like a beautiful stew or soup. So I learned from my father, you know, and I became a very inclusive person. That's what SpeakEasy is all about, you know. I'm my father's daughter. You know, I didn't open a church to have one, you know, idea. I studied from A Course in Miracles. That's my spiritual backbone. But in this temple, in this chapel, in this ashram, whatever you choose to call it, it doesn't matter. You can come and find your God, and you can call that God Buddha or Kuan Yin. You could call that God, you know, higher power or group consciousness. It doesn't matter to us what you call your God, just that you call your God. You know, to put God first, to set the table with God at the head of the table. If we seek first God, all else is given. I don't know why we're worrying about what we call our God. It's a ridiculous argument. To have different philosophies surrounding us, they enhance us, they enhance our children, they enhance our conversation, they cause us to be more holy. They cause us to be more well-rounded individuals as we move out into the world. They cause us to appreciate the different ways that we communicate and the different ways that we celebrate. Sally Ann is leading a group right now that's going to bring even more ideas of how to celebrate and honor different philosophies and theologies in our community. And I had almost the error of saying other philosophies or theologies, but it's not other. That's true. That would think that we were the one and then there was some other. But it's things that we don't know yet, things that have not yet been honored in our close-knit circles. So that's exciting. And we can see it in so many ways. You know, last week we had Jarrell here. Wasn't he great? Yeah. And he taught us not just about a theology or philosophy, but literally how he sees the world and how he communicates with the world and communes with the world. There's so many different ways to communicate and commune with the world. And he happens to do it through dance because he has autism. And because we got to see that, we got awakened to another way of being and another way of seeing. You know, and this is good for us. This is good for us to experience diversity and to appreciate diversity in the most optimal way. So, among us, we still have, you know, traditionalists and conservatives, maybe even racists. But even in those dark corners, or, well, let me say for traditionalists or conservatives, there's something to be had. There's some gifts to be had from what they bring to the conversation. And what we bring to the conversation if we're traditionalists and conservatives. You know, the reason that we go down to my family's vacation house every year is because it's a tradition. And traditions are good for the soul. But when traditions get in the way of kindness, that those rituals need to be sacrificed. And it's really hard to sacrifice old traditions, especially for traditionalists. And especially for conservatives. It's scary to give up what you know. It's scary to jump into the great mystery. I happen to have been bred for that, but not all of us are. And we can't assume that it's an easy walk for everyone. It's not. It's not an easy walk. And we're watching that, how uneasy it is for people to give up old ideas. I drove up here from North Carolina and I literally passed a Confederate flag. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, who in their right mind at this hour? But that's where we have to bring love to. Right there is where we need to bring love to, not judgment. That's never going to help. That never has helped. So, again, it's not easy. But here at SpeakEasy, we're attempting to do something very different. You know, we're attempting to have an inclusive community. SpeakEasy is where we speak easily about life and love and the pursuit of happiness. And these events that happened this last week in Charlotte are not easy to speak of. They're not easy to watch. They're not easy to contemplate. And there was an immediate desire for us to say, that's not us. That's some repulsive monster, some yellow-bellied coward that's crawling its way out of nowhere, with beady eyes, and we don't own that. But that's us. That's me, that's you, that's ours to heal. And we won't heal it unless we claim it. It's our cancer, you know? If you have cancer and you go around pretending you don't have cancer, it doesn't work out for you usually. So, you know, we've always had a bit of cancer, and we're dealing with it. We're dealing with cancer, and how do we do that? Do we do it by blaming the cancer? By pointing our finger? Oh, I must have had bad thoughts to have cancer. You know, that's what we do in the New Thought religion of, you brought this upon yourself. That's really helpful. You know, but we bring love to it. We bring compassion to it. We bring gentleness to it. That's how we'll heal it. So, you know, this past week, I wrote on Facebook that when I saw the images, that it was like finding an old friend still doing crack. You know, that's what it felt like. Like, I was like, is this really us? Is this who we are? This seems like so wrong. But then, you know, I thought to myself, like, what type of pain would a person have to be in to experience that? And when I don't know the answer, I go within. And sometimes I'm directed to look outward and to look deeper into the scenario. And so I did look deeper into the scenario specifically for this young man, and what I learned was that, that he was in a lot of pain. His father was actually killed by a drunk driver. His father was killed by a drunk driver before he was even born. And it made me think, like, he just repeated the whole thing. He got drunk on fear and he killed someone. And so instead of healing his organic or original wound, he chose to repeat it. Now, we've all done that, haven't we? Instead of going in and healing the wound, we just repeat it unconsciously. And so today, because this teacher has come under our nose, we get to say, how can we really look at this and take it in and heal it from the inside? You know, where is it that I'm harboring unconscious ideas or thoughts that I keep repeating? If you don't know what they are, go to a practitioner. You know, go to your divine, ask in prayer, be sincere. We all have them. We all have blind spots. It's best if we cop to them so that we can experience a greater good. And then I also got to look a little bit deeper at this beautiful woman, Heather, you know, and what she was all about to show up in this scenario. And when I looked deeper for her, I saw that she was so convicted to her truth. It's so beautiful. That's us too. She showed up for what she believed in. That's us too. That's our healthy aspects of ourselves. She worked for an African-American lawyer who hired her on the suggestion of a friend. And she graduated high school, but she had no, law background. And she worked so hard for him that she didn't take vacations for the first 2 years. And he said that she once dated someone who wasn't really in agreement with her working for a successful African-American man, and she told her boss that, and then she dumped the guy. And he said the one thing about her was that, and I love this part because we realize we're also human, was that she didn't like to get to work earlier on time, so he changed the hours of his business to to work for her. But you know, that's so beautiful, you know, because we're no longer talking about saints that are inaccessible to us. We're talking about human beings, average Joes like you and I, who are actually, you know, have our flaws and have our fierceness, and it's so beautiful. That's us. That's us too. So, so after her death, her friends got together and they said, you know, what should we do now? And they said, well, what would Heather do? And they thought for a moment, and they said, Heather would love harder, and Heather would preach love even more. And that's what we intend to do to make sure that her life is not in vain. And that's what we can do as well, you know? We can get back up. We can dust ourselves off. It's heartbreaking, yes, it's totally heartbreaking. There's so many people with broken hearts right now. But the good news is that hearts are meant to be broken. That's what they're designed for that. They're designed to be broken just like lobsters are, you know, designed to grow out of their shells. When a lobster reaches capacity in its growth, it can no longer live in that shell, so the shell has to be busted open, and then the little lobster is all vulnerable and he has to hide under a rock until he grows another shell. And that's our heart too. So it's not to negate the fact that right now our hearts are very vulnerable and we want to hide them underneath a rock. You know, we want to protect them. And that's okay to protect our hearts. But don't think for a second that your heart isn't actually growing to a greater capacity for love, because that's what's happening too. So today, like every day, we get to dust ourselves off, you know, and get back up. And to love, not just when it's easy, you know, not just when you guys smell good and you come shiny and pretty to Sunday morning. But love when you're holding those flags that we don't agree with. And love when we don't want to love. That's really our work. That's really our work when we want to really talk about inclusivity. But we don't have to go it alone, you know. We might think that's a really hard call to action, to love the darker corners of ourselves, to love our cancer. But we don't have to go it alone. You know, we go with God. God goes with us every step of the way. And we get to, when you create that relationship with God, when you sit God at the head of the table, you get to reap the benefits of it. And if you don't have an intimate relationship like that with God, get one now. You know, get one now. Do what you have to do. Turn within. A little goes a long way. A little stillness, a little contemplation, a little spiritual practice. Invest in it. Invest in it more than your Starbucks, more than your designer shoes. Invest in your spiritual growth. Invest with time. Invest it with acts of service. Invest in it. That's the kind of investment that's going to carry you over these rough patches and weary ways. That's the thing that's going to lift you from the fray. So we get to set the table with God, put God at the head of the table. And I wanted to tell you one little story also before we go into conversation. And this was actually the story I was going to tell before this whole thing went down. And it was about a story that I read in the Bible about Elijah and the widow. And Elijah goes, he listens to God, and God says, you know, go out to this town. There's going to be a widow there. She's going to make you some bread. Hang out with her. I'm giving you the, hippie version of the story. Hang out with her. And so he goes, and he finds this widow at the gates, and she's gathering sticks. And he said, hey, go give me some water and make me some bread. And she's like, as surely as the Lord is your God, I don't got it to give. I don't got it to give. I'm actually gathering sticks right now to go home, to build a fire, to make some bread for my son that we can eat and then die. That's what she says. It sounds dramatic, but maybe it was dire times. I don't know. But these are the words in the Bible. So he says, yes, I understand that. I understand that there's nothing in your cupboard and that you're afraid. But trust me, if you make this bread for me, your cupboards will be full. You will have enough oil. You will have enough flour. This story reminds me of the Hanukkah story. When they took over the temple and they were going to light the menorah again, and they only had enough oil for one day. But their faith gave them oil for 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6, and then 7, and then 8 days. And the idea here is that it's through giving. It's through placing our trust in God that we'll be given more, not less. This is the great heresy that this world wants us to buy into, that there's not enough, but there's more than enough. And you will see miracles as you place your trust in God. And it will return to you not just a little, it will return to you tenfold. It always returns tenfold. Whether it's good that you put out or bad, it returns tenfold. So we want to be really impeccable about what we're adding to the conscious stew, specifically at this time when things are getting stirred up. So if you want love, basically be love. If you want light, be lighthearted. If you want joy, invest in your joy. This is how we do it. This is how we extend ourselves in love. And it's happening here. We see it happening in small and subtle ways and in big and beautiful ways. We see it happening in our community. And it's so awesome to witness the love that's finding its threads and weaving this beautiful community. So we're seeing that it actually works. And we're here, each of us, to bring something beautiful into the world. We're here to help each other birth that greater good, to fall in love. And that's where we're headed. So despite the mad ramblings of the world, and despite the tantrums that the world seems to be going through, and despite the addiction to inclusivity that seeks to shatter us all, we are moving towards unity. We are. We're making our way to love. We are. And that's not just the word, that's the truth. Amen.
Try and imagine you're a different kid. Don't fit in. Forever the receiving end of cruel jokes. Kicking sand. Little voice inside your head says hold your breath. Count to 10. What would they do to you if you made a stand? It's easy to say. It's easy to choose. But you can't understand till you walked in his shoes. Easy to say, get the joke. Wears ugly dresses that her mama thinks third rate. Her little sister is another one, so dumb. Goes to figure they're from some other town. Weird, her daddy was a bad man, too tan. They ran away from him and landed here, so weird. My mama says they're only no-class white trash. Says daddy's taxes is what keeps them around. And it's easy to say, it's easy to choose. You can't understand till you walked in her shoes. Easy to say till it happens to you. Oh, imagine, what would you do? Try and imagine. What do you know about prejudice, injustice? When did you look into the face of God? What do you know of insecurity, poverty? How can you talk about it? What do you know about it? How can you laugh about it? What do you know about it? We come into this world an innocent blank slate. Have to be taught by others how to love, who to hate. Why is the worst in us the righteous one? So proud, so glad to be the loudest face in the crowd. And it's easy to say, it's easy to choose, but you can't understand till you walked in our shoes. Easy to say till it happens to you. Oh, try and imagine, what would you do? Try and imagine, what would you do?
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more tips and tools on how to be a spiritual vixen, go on over to my website, MaureenMuldoon.com, and you can sign up for my love notes. Until then, I'm Maureen Muldoon, the spiritual vixen, reminding you to love more, fear less, and don't forget to laugh.